The wind screamed across the empty highway like a wounded animal, driving sheets of snow so thick that Victoria Sterling could barely see beyond her windshield. Her fingers gripped the leather steering wheel of her silver Mercedes, knuckles white, with tension as the luxury sedan fought against the icy road beneath its wheels. "Come on," she whispered through gritted teeth, watching the fuel gauge hover dangerously close to empty. The GPS had lost signal 20 minutes ago, leaving her completely alone on this godforsaken stretch of rural highway somewhere in the mountains of Colorado. Victoria Sterling was not accustomed to feeling helpless. At 32, she commanded boardrooms with the confidence of someone who had built her tech empire from nothing, turning a small software startup into a billion-dollar corporation. Her tailored designer coat and perfectly styled blonde hair spoke of success, power, and control. But none of that meant anything out here in the wilderness, where nature held all the cards. The engine coughed once, twice, then died completely. No. No! No! Victoria slammed her palm against the dashboard, but the car remained silent except for the howling wind that seemed to mock her predicament. She tried the ignition again and again, but nothing happened. The storm had won this round. Through the swirling snow, she could barely make out a faint glow in the distance. It looked like a light, perhaps from a house or barn. With no other options and her phone showing 0 bars, Victoria pulled her coat tight and stepped into the blizzard. The cold hit her like a physical blow, stealing her breath and sending shivers through her entire body. Her expensive leather boots, perfect for Manhattan sidewalks, offered little traction on the icy ground. She stumbled forward, following the distant light like a beacon of hope in the darkness. After what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, Victoria found herself standing before a weathered wooden farmhouse. Warm yellow light spilled from the windows, and she could smell wood smoke from the chimney. With numb fingers, she pounded on the heavy oak door. The door opened to reveal a man unlike anyone in her usual social circle. Daniel Rivers stood tall and broad-shouldered, his dark hair slightly tousled, wearing a simple flannel shirt that had seen better days. His face was rugged, marked by years of working outdoors, but his brown eyes held a kindness that immediately put her at ease despite her desperate situation. "Please," Victoria managed through chattering teeth. "My car broke down. I'm lost, and I'm freezing." Daniel studied her for a moment, taking in her expensive clothes and obvious distress. Without a word, he stepped aside and gestured for her to enter. "Come in before you turn into an ice sculpture." The warmth of the farmhouse enveloped Victoria like a protective embrace. The interior was simple but comfortable, with worn wooden floors, handmade furniture, and a stone fireplace that crackled with dancing flames. It was nothing like her penthouse apartment in the city, but somehow it felt more welcoming than anywhere she had been in years. "Thank you," she said, her voice still shaking from the cold. "I'm Victoria Sterling." "Daniel Rivers," he replied, hanging her wet coat on a peg by the door. "You picked a hell of a night to be driving through these parts. The Weather Service issued warnings about this storm hours ago." Victoria felt a flush of embarrassment. She had been so focused on reaching her destination for an important business meeting that she had ignored all the warnings about the approaching blizzard. "I thought I could make it through before it got too bad." Daniel shook his head, but not unkindly. "City folks always think they can outrun nature. Sit by the fire while I make some coffee? You look like you could use it." As Victoria settled into a comfortable armchair near the fireplace, she found herself studying this unexpected savior. Daniel moved with quiet confidence around his kitchen, preparing coffee with the same careful attention she gave to million-dollar deals. There was something peaceful about watching him work, something that made her racing heartbeat slow to a normal rhythm for the first time in months. "Do you live here alone?" she asked, accepting the steaming mug he offered. "Just me and the animals," Daniel replied, settling into the chair across from her. "I raise cattle and grow organic vegetables. Not exactly glamorous, but it's honest. Work. Victoria sipped the coffee, surprised by how rich and flavorful it was. It's very peaceful here. I can't remember the last time I heard such complete silence. Daniel smiled, the expression transforming his serious features. That's the thing about storms. They force you to slow down, to pay attention to what really matters. As the evening progressed, Victoria found herself sharing things she rarely discussed with anyone. She told Daniel about the pressure of running a major corporation, the loneliness that came with success, and how she sometimes felt like she was living someone else's life. In return, he spoke about his decision to leave the corporate world years ago after his father died, choosing to return to the family farm rather than pursue a career in engineering. "Weren't you afraid of giving up everything you had worked for?" Victoria asked, genuinely curious about someone who could walk away from ambition so easily. "I was terrified," Daniel admitted, "but I realized I was working toward goals that weren't really mine. My father taught me that success isn't about how much money you make or how many people know your name. It's about being able to look at yourself in the mirror and like the person staring back at you." Those words hit Victoria harder than she expected. When was the last time she had truly liked herself? When had her drive for success become an endless chase for something that always remained just out of reach? The storm continued to rage outside. But inside the farmhouse, something unexpected was happening. The barriers that Victoria had spent years building around her heart were beginning to crack. She found herself laughing at Daniel's stories about stubborn cows and mischievous chickens, feeling lighter than she had in months. As the night grew late, Daniel prepared a guest room for her, providing warm blankets and everything she needed to be comfortable. Standing at the doorway, Victoria looked back at this man who had shown her such kindness without expecting anything in return. "Thank you, Daniel, not just for the shelter, but for reminding me that there are still good people in the world." "Get some rest," he said softly. "Tomorrow we'll figure out how to get you back to your life." But as Victoria lay in the unfamiliar bed, listening to the wind gradually calm outside, she found herself wondering if she really wanted to go back to her old life at all. When hearts find home. The morning sun painted the snow-covered landscape in shades of gold and silver, transforming the previous night's treacherous storm into a winter wonderland. Victoria woke to the sound of gentle movement in the kitchen below, and the rich aroma of bacon and fresh coffee drifting up the stairs. She had slept better than she had in years, despite being in a stranger's house. There was something about the quiet safety of Daniel's farmhouse that had allowed her mind to finally rest. As she dressed in the clothes Daniel had kindly washed and dried for her, Victoria caught sight of herself in the small mirror above the dresser. Without her usual makeup and designer styling, she looked younger, more natural, almost like the girl she had been before success had hardened her edges. Downstairs, Daniel was standing at the stove, expertly flipping pancakes while humming an old country song under his breath. He looked up as she entered, his warm smile making her heart skip in a way that had nothing to do with caffeine withdrawal. "Good morning," he said, pouring her a cup of fresh coffee. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in months," Victoria admitted, accepting the mug gratefully. "Thank you for everything, Daniel. I don't know how to repay your kindness." "No need for repayment," he replied, setting a plate of perfectly golden pancakes in front of her. "Though I should probably check on your car this morning. The storm's passed, and we might be able to get it running." As they shared breakfast, Victoria found herself studying Daniel in the morning light. There was something magnetic about his quiet confidence, the way he moved with purpose and spoke with genuine sincerity. In her world of corporate sharks and power games, she had forgotten that people like this still existed. After breakfast, they walked together to where her Mercedes sat half buried in snow. Daniel examined the engine with practiced hands while Victoria watched, impressed by his mechanical knowledge. "Your fuel line's frozen and the battery's dead from the cold," he explained, closing the hood. "I can fix it, but it'll take a few hours. The roads won't be cleared until this afternoon anyway." Victoria felt a strange mix of disappointment and relief. Part of her knew she should be anxious to return to her responsibilities, but another part wanted to stay in this peaceful bubble a little longer. "Would you like to see the farm while we wait?" Daniel offered. They spent the morning walking through his property, and Victoria was amazed by what she discovered. Daniel had created something beautiful here, not just a working farm, but a sustainable ecosystem that provided for both animals and the land itself. His cattle grazed in snow-dusted pastures, his chickens roamed freely in a large, protected area, and even in winter, she could see evidence of the extensive gardens that would bloom in spring. "This is incredible," Victoria said, watching a group of calves play in the snow. "You've built something really special here." "It's taken years to get it right," Daniel replied, leaning against a fence post. "But every morning when I wake up, I know I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Can you say the same about your life?" The question caught Victoria off guard. She had spent so many years climbing the ladder of success that she had never stopped to ask herself if she was happy at the top. "I thought I could," she said slowly. "But lately, I feel like I'm running on a treadmill that keeps getting faster. No matter how much I achieve, it's never enough." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "I used to feel that way too. I had a good job in Denver, made decent money, had all the things I thought I wanted, but I was miserable. It wasn't until I came back here after Dad died that I realized I had been living someone else's dream." They continued walking, and Victoria found herself opening up in ways she never had before. She told Daniel about her childhood in foster care, how she had built her walls so high to protect herself from pain that she had forgotten how to let anyone in. She spoke about the loneliness of success, how every relationship felt transactional, how she sometimes wondered if anyone would miss her if she disappeared. "You're not as alone as you think," Daniel said gently, stopping to face her. "You just haven't found your people yet." Standing there in the snow, looking into his kind eyes, Victoria felt something shift inside her chest. It was terrifying and wonderful at the same time. The feeling of walls crumbling, of letting someone see her real self without armor or pretense. As they walked back toward the house, Daniel's phone rang. He answered with a concerned expression that quickly turned to alarm. "That was my neighbor," he explained after hanging up. "There's been an accident on the main road. A family with young children. Their car slid into a ditch. The ambulance can't get through yet because of the road conditions." Without hesitation, Daniel was already moving toward his truck. "I have medical training from my Army days. I need to help." "I'm coming with you," Victoria said firmly. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do." The accident scene was chaotic, but not as serious as it could have been. The family was shaken but mostly uninjured, trapped in their overturned SUV. While Daniel worked to free them from the vehicle, Victoria found herself naturally taking charge of the situation. She called emergency services on Daniel's satellite phone, organized the other neighbors who had arrived to help, and kept the frightened children calm with stories and jokes. Watching her in action, Daniel saw a different side of Victoria. Not the corporate executive, but a natural leader who genuinely cared about people. Her take-charge attitude wasn't about power or control. It was about making sure everyone was safe and taken care of. By the time the paramedics arrived, the family was free and being treated for minor cuts and shock. The lead paramedic, who knew Daniel well, clapped him on the shoulder. "Good work as always," the medic said. Then, looking at Victoria with curiosity, he added, "Don't think I've seen you around here before." "I'm just passing through," Victoria replied, but the words felt strange in her mouth. As they drove back to the farmhouse, an unusual quiet settled between them. The adrenaline from the rescue was fading, replaced by something deeper and more complex. "You were amazing back there," Daniel said finally. "So were you," Victoria replied. "Do you do that often? Rush to help strangers?" "When people need help, you help," he said simply. "That's what neighbors do." The concept was foreign to Victoria, who lived in a world where helping others was usually calculated for maximum benefit. But watching Daniel risk his safety without a second thought to help a family he barely knew had touched something deep in her soul. Back at the farmhouse, Daniel worked on her car while Victoria sat on the porch, wrapped in a warm blanket and watching him. Her phone, finally charged, buzzed with dozens of missed calls and messages from her office. The outside world was demanding her attention, pulling her back toward her responsibilities and obligations. "Car's ready," Daniel announced, wiping his hands on an old rag. "Should get you wherever you need to go." Victoria stood slowly, suddenly, reluctant to leave. "Daniel, this weekend has been—" "I know," he said softly, stepping closer. "I feel it too." They stood facing each other in the afternoon sunlight, the weight of unspoken feelings heavy in the air between them. Victoria had never been one to act impulsively, but everything about this moment felt like the most important decision of her life. "What if I stayed?" she whispered. Daniel's eyes widened with surprise and hope. "Your company, your life in the city? What if none of that matters as much as I thought it did?" Victoria stepped closer, her heart pounding. "What if the most important thing is finding someone who sees you for who you really are?" Daniel reached out and gently touched her face, his calloused fingers warm against her skin. "Are you sure? This isn't your world, Victoria. This is mud and early mornings and hard work with no guarantees." "But it's real," she said, leaning into his touch. "It's honest. And for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." When Daniel kissed her, it was soft and sweet and full of promise. It was nothing like the calculated relationships of her past. This was pure and true and terrifying in its intensity. As the sun set over the snow-covered fields, Victoria made the call that would change everything. She spoke to her board of directors, announcing her intention to step down as CEO and sell her majority stake in the company. There would be consequences, financial losses, people who would call her crazy for walking away from billions of dollars. But standing in Daniel's arms watching the stars appear in the clear mountain sky, Victoria knew she had finally found something worth more than money. She had found home. 6 months later, the former CEO, Victoria Sterling, was unrecognizable. Her hands were calloused from farm work, her designer clothes replaced with practical jeans and boots. She had established a foundation that provided microloans to small farmers and rural communities, using her business expertise to help people like Daniel expand their sustainable operations. The village that had once whispered about the city woman who abandoned everything for love now spoke with admiration about Victoria Rivers, Daniel's wife, who had brought new opportunities and hope to their community. And every morning, as Victoria woke to the sound of roosters crowing and her husband's gentle breathing beside her, she smiled. She had traded an empire for a farm, a penthouse for a farmhouse, power for peace, and she had never been richer. Sometimes the greatest success comes, not from climbing higher, but from finally find.